Ever wish you had someone to talk to anytime, anywhere, no matter what you're going through? Meet PsychPal, your 24/7 AI companion designed to help you process your thoughts, calm your mind, and keep you moving forward. Chat anytime during a panic attack, on a restless night, or just when you need to vent. Prefer talking instead of typing? Try voice journaling. PsychPal listens, transcribes, and truly understands. You can even upload screenshots of tough conversations and it'll help you unpack how they made you feel. PsychPal keeps life organized too. It can add appointments to your calendar, track your mood, and even summarize your sessions for your therapist so you'll never lose progress. Plus, built in crisis resources are always just one click away. It's a privacy first, constantly evolving, made to complement your professional care, not replace it. Ready to try it out? Head over to the link in this episode and use my code Pete at checkout to get 20% off your first month subscription to PsychPal. PsychPal, because your mind deserves a companion too. That's how you want last time. I don't want to be normal, they know I will not die. You can try no more, so you can kill my time. All the times that I'm so still got my pedal through the metal. Told you I'll be a mogul, that's how you want last time. I don't want to be normal, so you can stay inside. That's why they say that you're local. You see this world is mine. I'm not leaving you hope for them time. I'm taking mode, I'm loading, I will no more, so that's how you want last time. I don't know what's so hard, can you get it through your mind? Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. My guest today is a certified existential kink coach, eternal family system informed practitioner, and a former professional dominatrix. You heard that right, guys. Please welcome in the one, the only Tina Estrella. Tina, welcome in so much.
Hello, Peter. Thanks so much. That was a juicy introduction.
So Tina comes in from our good friend Catherine from the Willow Healing Matters podcast. So, of course, naturally, we had to say yes to her, of course, because Catherine never says anybody bad over here for me. So, Tina, why don't you tell everybody a little more about yourself, and then we'll get into that interesting intro right there.
Yeah. So, my name is Tina Estrella. I work currently as an existential kink coach, certified. I did some coaching training, and I actually, what I'm always saying is like, I give people permission slips to come to their inner truth, knowing that the answer is already inside of themselves. Because that's what we do. Like, we remember that we know, because we just forgot.
So, Tina, naturally, our first question is, how do we get from dominatrix to where we're now? Because I think this is an interesting starting point to the end point of these things. So, and I know
Yeah.
have you always been in the Berlin area though?
I am like German by birth.
Okay.
So I was born in Germany, but then I grew
Awesome.
up in Brazil. So when I was 12, we went for 6 years to Rio de Janeiro. So I spent most of my youth there, and then we went back to Germany, which I did not like that much at the time. And so now I'm
Well, I
currently
happen to
also
be.
having plans to move to Malta because
So
Germany
you
is very
have
cold in
a fellow
winter.
German here, by the way, Tina. By the way, I'm German and Polish. So my mom's side is
Oh,
German, my dad's side is
interesting.
Polish. I was like,
Yeah.
but anyways, how did we get from dominatrix to where you're now? Because I think this is going to be an interesting story because, I was like, I read your profile. I was looking at it a little bit. I know a little bit more, but let's give everybody a little rundown of how we got to where we're at now.
Mm, yeah. Thank you. So dominatrix was a part of my own healing journey. I
Mm-hmm.
was officially by now misdiagnosed in my 20s with severe depression and borderline syndrome and the things that especially women were diagnosed back then who actually today get diagnosed. And I know I am ADHD and also part of the autism spectrum. And it, for me, that BDSM world, at some point, I don't even know how it came into my field, but it sounded like
Yeah.
so interesting. I was like instantly drawn like a magnet to it. And then I started on the other side. I started on receiving, on being on the receiving end.
Yeah.
And I very soon realized like the safest way to explore that side would be in a professional context because there's always other women looking after, let me adjust my microphone. They're looking after the subs. And so
Mm-hmm.
I did. It was also this very taboo thing to do, you know? It was, like,
Exactly.
typical for
I was gonna
ADHD
say the
people,
same
go,
thing,
like,
so
for the
yeah.
important stuff. And from
No, I was
there,
gonna say
I
the
was
same thing
like,
though, it's taboo a little bit, so but you hit it already for me.
totally. Yeah, yeah. It was this wild taboo thing to do, and then after a while, I transitioned into, being more a dom because it
Mhm.
just naturally comes it makes more sense. Like, being sub in a professional context is intense. Like, I just let it be for my more private, experiences, but the dom thing it was fun. It was a fun way to make money.
Oh, listen,
Yeah.
hey, listen, if people wanna pay you to do whatever you had listen, amen to that, that's what I say, if they're gonna pay you to do it, why not, Hey, go for it, that's what I say.
And it's also like, it's very interesting because, like, now with the existential king coaching, it's very similar. It's very
Mhm.
similar. If you want to be a good dom, you need to be able to tap into people's nervous system and find out what are their desires without them telling you explicitly, because very often clients don't know yet what they want. I'm here to help them, and if you have a good notion what that might be, you already have like half of the journey, because you know which tools would work best and which
Mhm.
questions to ask them, so we don't like stagger around in the darkness forever together. So in the dominatrix profession, that is like total key, like being full attention outward, full attention on the client. In coaching, it's not much different. Just different
No, I'm
clothes, different context.
listen, to tell you what, I was interested the minute I read your profile when I said that because I'm like, this is interesting because a lot of people, like you said, say it's taboo. But I think it's a lot of people just don't understand that, how that side works. And they only see what they see on the outside. And people always judge, everybody's quick to judge things regardless of what it is. They always judge all that kind of stuff. I have a friend that's her community and things like that too. And I respect and, talks about all the other stuff that comes with it and things like that. Not really my area, but listen, hey man, more power to people. I support whatever people want to do. That's their own decision. I don't judge people. Like I've heard weird stories of things, but if that's your thing, hey man, that's cool. But I think it's so interesting though, the way that you're talking about how they need to basically kind of figure things out ahead of time though, because it's interesting. Because you're right, you want to figure out what they're looking for. That way they keep coming back. Because they're not gonna be like, if you can't figure out what they want, you're not really fitting that need for them in that role. Am I not correct?
Yeah, and I mean, that for me, it was always like I wanted to be a good dom. I wanted to be a
Hmm.
good dominatrix, and that came with those exact same skill sets. Like, as a good coach, is like being
Hmm.
able to have my attention on them. Like, what is their nervous system telling me? Trying out different approaches, and then seeing how their nervous system reacts. How does their animal body respond to new impulses? Because it's very much about, so in the dominatrix field, it's very much about like having someone, giving someone the space, the health space to experience sides of them they didn't first permit themselves to experience, and very often not even know that those sides are inside of them. And so with internal family system and existential coaching, it's the same thing. It's like giving people a held space, a container where they can explore parts of them that until now seemed like very taboo, very not welcome, that don't make sense to the logical mind. So again, it's very similar. It's just different clothing, and then obviously other contexts and
Yeah. Oh yeah,
different
definitely.
practices, but deep down, it's very similar.
So how come why'd you leave the professional? Is it just because you got more interested in the other coaching side of it? You figured, what I mean? It's interesting how you ended up where you're at now, but it's like you said, a
Mm.
lot of the principles are the same. So it had to be kind of a smooth transition for you though, because the same principles apply basically as you get into this other stuff too.
Well, I had a whole different phase in between. In between was
Hmm.
my yogic phase, my meditation phase, my wearing
Yeah.
only white and chanting mantras. And that was, so I entered the spiritual work and support through the more, I always call it the dark Shakti side. And then there was this natural inclination to also try the light and love and light field. And also, I mean, we got to be super honest. there is a lot of weird people outside in the BDSM section as well. Like a lot of people were like, I always were like in this position where I said like, dude, you don't need a dominatrix. You need like a skilled psychotherapist. Sorry. Like I can't help you.
Tina's like,
And
that request is a little too weird for even me, man. I don't know about this one.
there's like you get weird requests and there's like
Yeah.
strange people out there like and so at some point I just went all on the other side of the spectrum and did some healing work there and did some learned body work, energetic body work. I
Yeah.
started doing workshops with I did a yoga teacher training, all that stuff. And then it came back round full circle with the existential king coaching because at some point I also realized not everything in the world is love and light. Let's be honest, it's
Yeah.
not. There's a lot of darkness out there. The human psyche, the human
Mm-hmm.
condition includes very dark stuff. So for
Oh
me,
yeah.
it was more coming back to like the more conscious side of BDSM. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, but like you said though, it's one of those things where, there are some weird people. I think that's what people see though when they hear that. They just see that weird people. They don't accept it for what it
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are really taboo when it comes to that kind of thing, because like some partners I've had are okay with talking about it out loud. Other people aren't. And then it's just like, it's just really weird because, it's like, okay, and then it's you know what I mean? And to me, I'm just like, hey, whatever. I'll have a conversation about anything. Me and my friend that like she's like I said, it's her area that's she's into all that kind of stuff. She told me about it. Okay, cool. Educate me a little more so I understand this conversation better. Like I was never turned down a conversation about certain things. Now sometimes it did get a lot of hand and things like that. But it's gonna happen. Some people are just not okay with certain conversation things. But I was curious. Listen, I'm open to listening to anything anybody wants to talk about, that kind of thing. Just because, it's like I don't want people to feel weird. Like, I mean, you don't have to feel you're into what you're into. That's your thing, man. You know what I mean? Like some people are into other things, other people, you know what I mean? To me, I'm just like, hey,
Totally.
man, whatever. I thought it was funny.
Totally.
I was laughing when I saw your profile though, because I saw that how it goes from dominatrix to what is now. I was just like, I was like, yeah, I got to talk to Tina. This is gonna be fucking great. I'm interested how we got to point A to point B at this point, and so like, then my dad and I were actually talking about it, Tina. He was talking about how when he was early on in his career, he was hanging out with some people that were into like getting tied to the wall and this weird shit. And he's just like, not for me, man. Hey, but if that's for you, that's cool, man. He just started telling me these like really random stories. I'm like, okay, well, because I was telling. My parents always ask about like some of the guests I talked to, and then yours came through when Catherine sent me. I say, hey, pops, I got to show you this. We got to talk. I want to show you this really quick. This is going to be an interesting conversation. And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be kind of yeah, that's gonna be interesting. You know what I mean?" He's always interested in who I'm talking to. So when we talked about your profile, he started talking about all these other random things. I'm like, "Pops," I said, "Listen, when you want to come on the show, we can talk about all these weird things you're telling me right now, bro. We can go down the list of just oddball things you want to share."
Does make zero sense to the logical mind. That's the whole point about it all. It does make zero sense to the logical mind. The logical mind goes like, why would I have someone tie me up and spank my ass? It does
Yeah,
not make any sense. And yet there are parts of us who totally love that weird shit. If it's not in that form, it's something else that, like, all those patterns that we find ourselves in that we're
mm-hmm.
like, "Why am I still doing this thing? I know it's not serving me. I know I want something else, and yet I find myself here doing this toxic thing again, whatever not." Those are same that's the same dynamics, is like our subconscious has a lot of weird strange preferences that the logical mind's like, "No way!" And yet,
Yeah, exactly.
if you look at what you're actually doing, so there's kink stuff in regular life that if you look at it, yeah, it's and so BDSM gives this very explicit, permission slip to just try it out. So
Yeah,
very
but
often, I would
but
also
the
have
same
people
thing though
who
too
came
though.
with certain fantasies. They had certain fantasies, and then when they tried it out, they was like, "Ooh, that's not my thing." And other things they were like, "No, that's like," and when they tried it out, they were like, "Oh my god, it's so good." So,
Yeah, I mean, you
what
never
we
know. You
never
never know until you try.
tried, we don't know.
Exactly. I think of the same thing. You never know until you try, man. You're like, you try and then you don't, not your thing. I get it completely. but at the same time, it's a respect thing too, because I know a lot of times in that community, there's a lot of misunderstanding and people get a little out of hand is what I hear a lot of people say sometimes too, so it's a mutual respect thing that you understand there's boundaries to things, and all that kind of stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. So, but I do know that your work here says that you do shadow work, though, which is interesting because one of my all-time guests on this show, who holds the most appearances, actually does shadow work. Melissa Kim Quarter actually has been on the show several times. So, how did you get into shadow working? Was that something you just kind of fell into along the way, your journey of your own past traumas and things, or is it just something you've always been interested in?
It just appeared, I think, naturally from
Hmm.
being in this, white clothing, yogic, let's emulate, the perfect version of ourselves and still not getting the results that I wanted. That's what I always tell everybody. No matter what you try, no matter what you're looking at, no matter what tools you wanna try, are they giving you the results that you're looking for? If they are, amazing, keep doing them. If they're not, try something else. And so the whole meditation and yogic practices and nervous system hacks and whatever not, they did work to a certain degree, and still there was a lot of unresolved things and patterns that would just not shift. They would not shift.
Yeah,
I would find myself back again, 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 again. And that's when shadow work came in, where like that and for me it made so much sense once I heard about the concept because I had already been in BDSM. So I was very familiar how it feels inside of your body, inside of your nervous
hmm,
system to allow that idea that there are parts of you that your shadow does love things that you in your logical mind say like nay, yet there is parts of you, your shadow, that's kind of the same thing depending
yeah,
on how you frame it, that is like yay, yes, totally, let's keep doing this because xyz. And so that shadow work just it naturally emerged. I was always very curious person. I was always very um open for trying new things. Again, like it comes down to
yeah,
trying new things. And so that shadow work just came up and it started to shift a lot with the caveat though that I then soon also discovered that a lot of people who do shadow work end up being in what I call shadow work addiction. Is like, gotta try something new. It's gotta be something new. Gotta be something new. Keep on doing something new all the time. And I was like, at some point, like, that doesn't make so much sense. Why does it have to be always something new? You know, when you have found something that helps you,
exactly.
also doing this consistently, that's a whole new or how other topic where people struggle. They like people who are prone to addiction when they come to shadow work, they get prone to like this endless navel gazing, this endless looking deeper. I got to like an analysis paralysis. I got to understand more. I need like no. At some point, you just gotta do the things, do the
Yeah.
practice, even when it gets hard, especially when it gets hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of times it gets hard for people. They give up, and a lot of times it's like, people that do like talk therapy, for example, like they have to do the work afterwards. They don't do the work afterwards. It's okay. We're going to
Yep.
keep going in this
Yeah.
vicious, endless cycle that we're in. But I get that, it's interesting because, like for shadow work, a lot of people, I know, remember what was it? TikTok made it big for a lot of people when they really started seeing it because they had the shadow work journals they were handing out to people and they were selling to people to do and things like that as well. So I always found it interesting, but Melissa's topic, that's her area though. She came back for the fourth time and we were talking about her new book, but that's what she does a lot too. So when I saw shadow working, I was like, oh, this is really going to be interesting too, because I love talking about it because a lot of people don't understand the concept. So maybe for somebody at home that may be thinking about it, what would the ideal person be that shadow working would work for, would you say? In your own opinion, honestly.
Yeah, so in my perspective, I find it very hard to say who's the ideal person for a certain tool because everybody needs to try it for themselves. What I can say is like what in my perspective shadow work is and what it is not because I know a lot of people get tripped up about what is shadow work actually. The term shadow, you could also say, is like the parts inside of your psyche that don't look so good on the outside, that don't um you don't like very much
Hmm.
about yourself. Those parts that keep you running on certain patterns where you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I still doing this? I know it doesn't serve me. And yet I keep doing it again and again. And so integrating those parts, integrating that shadow of yours does not mean that it will go away. That's not what is integration. Integrating means that you learn how to love those parts of yourself and how to uncode their message, uncode their true gifts that they're trying to give you through this behavior. Because from the family system perspective, there's no such thing as an internal enemy. So they are your shadow is trying to give you something beautiful deep, deep, deep down. There's just all those patterns and those behaviors that are layered over this intention because they never learned, those parts of you never learned that there are other options. They
Yeah.
have been trying for God knows how long to do this one thing because that's the only avenue that they perceive as that is the way to give it to you. And so you keep up always being like, but it's not working. Rah, rah, rah." And when you shame them and when you blame them yourself, when the inner critic is very loud,
Hmm.
that's what keeps you stuck in this loop of like, I don't want to do this anymore, but the part of me wants, but I don't like it. So I shame this part of me. And so that part just keeps like, grinding harder and harder and you never get out of it. It's this drama triangle carousel internally ongoing forever and forever. And so shadow integration means exactly that. Befriending those parts of you that seem to harm you, but their intention is not that's not their intention. So finding out what is that they are actually trying to give you with that behavior, and then bringing them on board, giving them a seat at the table, giving them your love. And then you both can find different ways of giving you that original, deep down, beautiful thing that they're trying to give you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Tina was talking about shadow working. I looked up the definition, and this is what it came back with. Basically, simply breaks it down as parts of me I am uncomfortable with, like, and why. Basically, like you were just saying, but it's like bringing the patterns into awareness so that you're less likely so you're less likely to control your you basically so you can control your reactions and habits and things like that. So I mean, I think it's a great idea for people, because sometimes you can find things out about yourself you may not realize. Sometimes we do have those hidden patterns and things that like look at like people's dating lives. You ever just notice that people date the same person and they get the same results, and then they go, well, why is me, instead of changing up the pattern, and then not, you know what I mean, because like you don't realize it. And I noticed that about myself too. Like my fast two partners, I dated a narcissist for 15 years, and then I got into another one. I got married to a narcissist after it, and now it's different because now I've actually gotten a chance to look at it and realize the pattern I was going through, and it's I changed the pattern, so now I can't sit there and blame anybody but myself because I didn't notice these things. But I think shadow working is a great tool, though. I think a lot of people, I think, though, at the same time, are scared to find out about those inner things because we don't like learning about ourselves. Sometimes we don't like to know these things. People don't like their emotions at that, or they're afraid of their emotions because they're not sure. Like sometimes there's an answer to why you're angry all the time. For years I never even knew that. Like I was always an angry person. There's always a situation I get into and it always just get me upset. I could never figure out what it was. And then when I started exploring
Mm,
things, I found out, it was a trigger from when I was a kid because my mom abandoned me when I was 10. And at the time I didn't think anything. I'm 10 years old, don't know anything. You don't know, you're still underdeveloped mind at that point, has no idea. But I remember that moment physically, like my body remembers it, but mentally I didn't totally remember the whole situation. Like I said, I go back to that moment, and anytime I get in that feeling or I feel like someone's going to leave, I usually get into a real triggering moment where I'll start like pushing people away before they can push me, kind of thing like that too. So, I've done a lot of like self reflecting this past year and start accepting my faults for where I was. And my life's gone a lot better now, man. It's been great. I met somebody new. Me and my kids don't have a relationship at this point. have a relationship now. We're talking more and things like that too. So, it's been great though. And shadow working's been helping out with that too. Cause when I met Melissa, I was introduced to the concept of it. And then, TikTok came out because everybody loves TikTok with the shadow working journals and things like that too. But I had this person in front of me, an expert that knows what she's doing. So I was working with her with it a little bit, and things like that too. And I started exploring a lot of different things about myself that I didn't realize after really looking back at it. You start noticing the little ticks and little patterns of things you're doing, and all the self-destructing cycles you go through and all that kind of stuff like that. And it's interesting to see, but at the same time, I, being the person that never liked to take responsibility for anything, had to start taking a lot of responsibility for what parts I had in things instead of blaming everybody, which was one of my biggest downfalls too, because I blame everybody else. I'd never take my own blame for anything I did. Always was somebody else's fault. It was never Pete's fault, and things like that too. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was the greatest thing I ever did because it changed my perspective on things. It changed the way people looked at me and things like that. It changed a lot of my relationships and things like that. But it's for the better, not for the worse.
Shadow work very often is not comfortable.
No.
It's not comfortable at the beginning. Then further on, when you like get to the point where like, you'd start to lean into that discomfort, you
Hmm.
start to lean into that trigger. At the beginning, you want to get away from it because it's uncomfortable, because it makes you look at your own shit. Like you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
at some point, you
Yeah.
got to start to look at your own shit and at your own contribution to toxic family patterns. And if there's a narcissist, there's a complementary narcissist, there's another person like a narcissist by themselves. They're like, you know, those patterns complement each other.
Hmm.
And so at the beginning, it's very uncomfortable to
Yeah.
look
It's a
at that
lot.
feeling like, oh my God, that like I definitely played a role in
Hmm.
this as well. And over time, we learn that like looking at these things and leaning into that discomfort, it's like going to the gym. When you start out, when you haven't worked out for a long time and you start going to the gym, oh my God, it's such a fucking
Yes,
struggle.
God.
It's so
Yes.
annoying. Every time you're like, oh, I don't want to go there. It's so intense. It's so hard.
That soreness when
And
you get
then
up next
over
morning. Yeah.
time, you start to build that muscle and you start to like that discomfort
Hmm.
of, yeah, let me go there. It gets juicy.
Yeah.
Same with
Yeah.
shadow work and same so that's why I like internal family systems so much. It's because it's a very gentle way of shadow work. It is shadow work, but it's a very gentle. It's the process itself is
Hmm.
so kind and so loving and so nurturing. So um because shadow work is an umbrella term for many different kinds of
Yeah.
practices. And the ones that I had encountered before, oh my God, they were intense. They were like going deep down into the mud.
The sound effects
And
are
I was
great.
like, "Oh my God, I've been doing this so much in my life. Isn't there something, like, sweeter? Can I, like, do this kind of work a bit less, like, boot camp at the gym? Where's the Pilates? I wanna do shadow Pilates, please." And Pilates is super intense, but it's
Yoga
not
is the
like
same way
someone's
too, though. I mean, I agree with you,
it
Tina.
is super intense,
It
it is
is.
very productive, it is, but there is also a very gentle thing to it in itself. And so that's where I landed with internal family system and also existential kink, because they're like there's so much approval. It's like this very approving of, yeah, today maybe that was this tiny little step that you did,
Yeah.
and the processes itself themselves. So in all of those practices, there's always like a certain process, a certain meditative sequence that you walk through to connect to with it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that is it's very nervous system supportive. It doesn't like push you into those hangovers. Like in other shadow work practices, I would have like intense hangovers the days after because it was just like so much stuff coming up. Like you said, that
Yeah.
stored stuff
Yeah.
from your childhood. And with internal family systems, also with existential kink, that does not happen that much because you don't push that far that fast. So
Yeah.
it's a very sustainable and still yet super extreme. For me, it was the fastest in the end because always going over the edge with my nervous system would have me have like super much breakdowns, hangovers for days and weeks. So ultimately, in the end, that slower and more gentle approach, but steady without the hangovers, would give me results in the end faster because I wouldn't break down all the time in between.
Yeah. No, my thoughts is I kind of like the aggressiveness, so it's but it's the way it applies to me. But that's just coming from my own experience. For other people, Tina's route may be better for you. It's just, whatever fits best for you at the end of the day, honestly. Whatever approach gets you to where you need to be is the way you need to go, though. Don't take what I do is what you should do. Tina's doing what worked for her, but there's so many different ways to look at it that, depending on how it applies to you in some way, because to me, I was just like, I had to take that hard look at what was going on, and it was just slapping you in the face the whole way through. Like it's like that metaphor where you're sitting out there riding the motorcycle, the bugs hit you in the face kind of thing. You're just getting shit hitting, different things are hitting you, and it's like, you got to deal with it though. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah.
it felt I don't think I had the hangover, so, like, because I was prepared. I think I was at that point where I was just like, "You know what, fuck it, I'm gonna ride this thing out and just see what happens." Because I'm the type of person where I'm just like, "You know what, I'll just wake up one day and be like, you know what, fuck it, let's just go for it." So I was like, "You know what, let's go for it. Instead of blaming everybody for my own problems, let me go look and see what I took place in," and I woke up that one day and was just like, "You know what, I'm gonna try this and see what happens," because if not, what else can I do? Continue this path I'm on, which was not leading me anywhere, but hell, going down to the ground. Now it's like everything I look at has been flipped prospectively. Now I look at things in a different way. People are looking at me in a different way, and they're like, "Well, I can see a change in you. I notice your mood changed and things you're doing differently." And it's that other stuff I thrive on too, is that people just noticing I'm making a change, because I'm trying to change for them. Like I said, I have 3 daughters. They wanted nothing to do with me. I was not the pleasant person to be around, so I don't blame them. Honestly, I was a horrible fucking person. I look back at it, I was a terrible person, but I can admit that though,
I know.
and that's the hardest thing
I
though.
know.
And that's the hardest part though. So,
So was I. Oh my god.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's hard because people that know me would before would say, "Well, I'd never admit it. I always make up a reason why, or I always avoid taking blame for what I did." And now it's differently. Now I'm taking blame for these things, and it's a way different way people are looking at me. And now I do this podcast, a lot of things have come to light. A lot of people didn't know a lot of things about me before, the things I struggled with. Like the whole first season of the show, I was in such a bad depressive mode that, like, where I was in the camera, you could see where I was. I was recording. I never left that room for the whole day until I went to work, because I worked nights. So I'd go there, stay there all day, and be in this room, complete darkness, swallowed in my own depression. But no one would ever even know because I didn't tell anybody. And then when I started becoming a
Yeah.
little more open about
Yeah.
it, I found that more people can handle the conversation, because that was my biggest fear, is like, when you start talking to people, you don't know if they're ready for this conversation that you're about to have. When I think when it comes to mental health, that's the problem for a lot of people. It's like, when you start talking about things, people start getting worried because, like, if you bring up suicide, they start freaking out. Like, oh God, oh no,
Absolutely.
stuff like that. But
Absolutely.
at the same time, though, doing the show, I understand that, like, grief and all these other things are just not topics some people can handle. And it's okay if they're freaking out, because that just means they're not ready for the conversation. And that's all right. That just means that's not the person I'm calling in a crisis.
And that's why we have therapists and
Hmm.
coaches and coaching communities and podcasts and all that kind of stuff, is because very often the very close people to us are not the right people to talk
Exactly.
about this, because they're not mental health professionals. They don't have the training and they don't have the distance also, like a good coach, a good therapist. You have both. You have the complete insight very quickly into that person's psyche, into reading their nervous system, into like having a strong signal about what is actually going on with them. And you have also the distance of like, this is not my brother, this is not my husband, this is not my daughter. So you can stay neutral. And that is very often um important for that person also to reveal their deepest, darkest, shadowy things, because they know they're not a burden to me. First of all, they pay me, and second of all, I am trained in holding those things and being
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, been there too. Totally okay."
I was laughing when you said they,
It's
they
that
pay me.
stigma is not so intense. Yeah, well, that's a big part of it.
Well,
It's like,
because when you think about it,
it's
like me and my guest prior to this interview, we were talking about the same thing. He mentioned the same things. Like, if you're gonna pay for it, you might as well go do something with it. Like therapy. People go to therapy, sometimes pay just to pay them to listen. Like, listen, you want to pay me to be a
I
professional? Listen,
swear,
I
for a
got you.
lot of people, that is the main thing for them to like. I notice when they're like realizing, oh God, we're already halfway through the session. I know I paid for it, and then like that is the motivation to like finally drop that thing that they were still like, I don't know, can I do? I shall I? Will I? La la. La. And then they realize like, oh my God, session's half the way through. Okay, I better go now. And then boom, out there it is. And then we can work it with it. And it is an important, it's an energetic thing, it creates an energetic balance because it is intense for
Hmm.
looking at people's darkest things.
Yeah. No,
Being
you're right.
able to look into the abyss without flinching, in my perspective, is one of the and still hold the container with love and compassion and kindness, and but not going into the bullshit story. That is, in my perspective, one of the most critical skills a coach and a therapist can bring. Is be like, yeah, I know I have done before I started with getting coached myself. I had like many years of classical psychotherapy
Hmm.
because, like I said, I was like deep down in addiction, substance addiction, self injury, whatever not. And I remember one of the therapists who really shifted things for me. She was like, "Yeah, you told me the exact same thing last week. What changed?" And then I was like, "Oh, okay. Okay, this is not the typical that you're used to, like, getting cuddled on the head for, oh, poor girl, you're
Yeah.
like having it so hard. No, 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 no. She was like exactly that thing. She held it with love and kindness and clarity, but absolutely also no bullshit attitude was like, and that changed.
Yeah.
That allowed me to like really start to get honest with myself to be like, yeah, she's actually right. What did I change from last week? Nothing. I'm just here rambling about myself once more.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. Yeah. And I think that's where people get caught in that endless loop with therapies. They're just like, they're there just to have something. Like I said, so if it's a pay me professional listener, hey, listen, I got you. Like, I'll sit there and listen to whatever you want all day. You just let me know. I'll send you my rates. All right. Because that's really much what you're doing. You're taking advantage of the fact these people have the skill set to help you, and it's a two-way road, honestly, because the other side should be pushing for them to do something. Hey, listen, let's work on something here. Let's put a goal here. Let's get something going that way we can make some progress here, and things like that too, because if I'm not doing anything, I'm just getting paid to sit here and listen to you kind of thing, and
Yeah. And ask you clever questions, like
hmm
questions that really like asking questions that let people look into places where they are still having their blind spots.
exactly.
Because that's why they are called blind spots. Because you cannot look them by you don't get there by yourself. So, or at least in that time, sometimes we over decades at some point we have an epiphany and we're like, oh yeah,
Right.
and then you like get into a blind spot by yourself. But a good therapist, a good coach, they're like they see your blind spots before, like long before you're like even suspecting where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And then that's a good thing too. And then sometimes it takes a few people to find somebody that fits you. And I think that's the other thing too.
totally.
People fuck up with is they go, well, I'm just going to stay with the same person. And it's not working, but it's like, hello, advocate
Yeah,
for
yeah,
yourself at this point. If it's not working, go find somebody
yeah,
that's going to work for you because you're paying them.
absolutely,
And people like Tina already
absolutely.
understand is that if she's not a fit for you, somebody else may be a fit for you. So don't use that as an excuse either. Oh well,
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt her feeling. Tina, trust me, Tina doesn't care at this point. She's like, if I'm not working for you, it's really not a big sweat. You're good. Go. I'd rather you go get the help you need because if I'm not effective for you, you're just paying me here to hang out with you.
That's what I'm also always saying, like, a good coach, a good therapist optimizes for that person not being endlessly their client.
Hmm.
Because if you like keeping them forever on that leash with you, you're kind of missing the point of your whole existence. My perspective,
That could be a new
you know?
business idea, though. Rent a friend. We'll have to think about that one.
Ideally, someone does not need my services into infinity. Ideally, at some point, they'd like take away the support wheels of their bike and they ride that thing by themselves.
Exactly. No, I agree. I agree. Well, Tina, we're at the part of the interview where I told you before we start recording, and we're going to ask you 2 questions. Okay. So the first question for you is kind of a fun one. So the question to you is that if your mental health had a song, okay, what would you say that song
Mm.
would be? This is a fun one, I'm telling you.
Oh, you mean my current mental health
Yes, your
or
current mental health.
mental
You can
health in
break it
general?
down however you like. So I'm interested to hear your answer.
That's very interesting. I never thought about that.
So this question comes credit to my friend from another podcast she runs called The Shit That Goes on Her Head. When we interviewed, she asked me the same question. I was like, you know what? That's a really great
Yeah.
question. And I'm a big music guy, so I like to hear other people's thoughts on what they would say would fall in those categories.
Yeah. I think it would be like a trilogy or something because I like, especially with the ADHD, I find it very, very hard to like narrow down to one thing.
Hmm.
But what I'm really like partying hard at the moment is Where the Fuck is My Husband? I'm loving that song because I'm turning 50 this year and I'm like, God, like, seriously, all the manifestation work, all the Venus prayer, whatever not. I love my life. And also, where the fuck is my husband? So
That's
that is
great.
one.
That's fucking great. I love that. That's
That is
awesome.
one. When that plays in the supermarket, I start like dancing it all wide and being like, okay, I'm using this to really manifest. Um,
She's like, "Where's it at? I'm waiting. Hello, haha, right here."
yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. That man is testing my patience.
Right?
Like, I love that. That sounds very fun. Um, what else? I'm blanking right now, to be honest.
No, you're good.
Let's
That's a good
keep
one.
it
We'll
with
go with that
that.
one. That was
There's
great,
like
though. That was
I
great.
would have to look at my playlist because there's
We had
many
one person.
who
He went
like
on
I
his
really
playlist.
resonate with. But
We had Anthony Spark on.
currently,
And Anthony was going through his whole playlist. Like, okay, Pete, I got you, man. And just start listing off like those. I'm like, all right, bro. Okay, that's cool. Just start listing off a bunch of songs. I'm like, all right, yeah, all right, man. So, my question for you, and the last question I have before we start wrapping this thing up is, I have a question for you. Basically, the reason this podcast even started was if you could break the stigma about mental health. Now, when I ask you this question, I am asking you in the way of something that you hear people repeat constantly that you just want them to stop believing. What would you say that one thing would be?
that their inner critic, they need to like hush down their inner critic. Don't. You want to like listen to them, but listen for real. The more you start to you try to push internal parts away, what you resist persists. Like back to this shadow work misunderstanding of I need to get rid of that. I need to get rid of my anxiety. Even the title of your podcast was a little bit like do I really go along with this podcast? But I know where it came from, so it does make sense. We evolve over time. So don't fight your anxiety. Don't fight your depression. That does not work. You need to integrate that shit.
Yeah.
You need to like, who is the part of you who believes that depression is the only way to give you probably something like internal peace, or something like anxiety. For me, I know anxiety very often what she's trying to give me is belonging and connection and human connection. That's why dating can be a really challenge for me.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
I
episode right
just
there.
unsubscribed from Hinge again because it was just fueling the anxiety so much. I was like, Tina, that is not your way to meet a person. It's not by an app that is like also messing with your dopamine system for the ADHD people. Very, very
Yeah.
challenging anyway. So don't try to get rid of your mental health
Yeah.
issues. Of the issues, yes, but not of the parts
Yeah.
because they are there. You once you learn to communicate with them properly and you find out what they're so sweet, they're so tender, they're such sweet little kids inside of you, former versions of you who didn't know how to do the things at the time.
Yeah.
So once you start to really connect with them, oh my God, it is such a loving relationship that you start to build. And it's really like, it, ah,
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree because I use
that's
my
my
anxiety. I mean,
message.
my anxiety is my superpower basically now because like I use it as a hypersensitive things. Like a lot of times when my anxiety is really high and my heart's racing, usually means there's something I need to be aware of. So I'm always constantly so, you know.
Absolutely.
But the
Absolutely.
show title throws a lot of people off. It's fun though. I love the title. It was great. And when I thought about it, because in the beginning it was a battle of me versus my
It
anxiety,
is.
but
It is.
now it's more of me
Because we didn't
controlling it.
know, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, because still a lot of people that is what mental health still is in a lot of people's mind is I need to get rid of this thing. I need to get rid of it. It needs to go away. I don't want this anymore. And yes, of course, the pattern, the behavior,
Hmm.
the structure, the reoccurring loops that
Hmm.
you put yourself in, yes, that's not something you want to keep experiencing forever. And also full approval of that thing, of that pattern being part of your personality right now is that's the base ground for any sustainable shift. Because if you shove it deeper down,
Yeah, we know what happens.
it will just come back up a lot louder
Totally.
again and again.
Exactly. Tina, with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Peace and Society. Before we do wrap up, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? What's the best place for them to reach Tina?
Okay, so ideally under the Linktree link, if you share those things, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I
because
can put all
my
that in the
Linktree is
description for
very
sure.
super complete. Everything is there. And so on the socials, it's either Flow State Manager Tina, because that's what I call this stuff that I do is flow state management, or it's Tina Estrella on YouTube, and also my webpage is tinaestrella.com.
Love it. Love it. Yes, Tina, we can put all that down there. You can put your link tree down there if you want in the description of this video for anybody that's listening at home. It'll be in the
Yes.
episode description for you guys. That way you can reach out to Tina. Tina, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us. This was a fantastic time. I had a really great time hanging out with you.
Thank you, Pierre. That was a very fun conversation. Thank you.
Guys, and with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You know where to find me on Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio and Pandora, too. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do could save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health?